Start at 7 o'clock. It's the 25th day of March, 2019. This is Jamaica Selectboard. And we'll start with the first order of business, which is to call for any late additions to the agenda. Anybody besides me? I have a couple quick ones. Nope. I have two real quick ones. We have Jeannine Stone, where you are there, is going to speak just for about 5 minutes on senior solutions. She wasn't able to make it to the town meeting, so I thought we'd have her do that tonight. We'll do that early because we're going to have some other things that we're discussing. And I got a request from the Jamaica Village School that I'll read at the end. Second on the list of fun things to do is the Select Board meeting minutes for March the 11th. Do you have any additions, deletions, corrections? I have only one. If you look on the third page, first paragraph, it says the total is regarding the new bid from Stuart Barker. The total will be $11,700 for the two sections. $11,718. I apologize for being so picky, but you never know.
11,700, what, and 18?
18.
Well, why didn't you see that?
Yeah. I was
You
going
sure
to.
that's
No,
not?
I'm looking at this right here.
Oh, his paper?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So I probably just, when I was saying it, I probably just mentally rounded it off. So we might as well keep the records
Yeah.
straight. Any other questions, corrections, additions, deletions?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as revised.
Is that a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the minutes are accepted as amended. Thank you very much. Oh, shoot. That's the job of the person who shoots it, by the way.
I know.
Tom's not here, it's your job.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, minutes are accepted. Thank you. Okay. Yes, we're gonna sit there, then you gotta do Tom's job of keeping me straight. Number 3, approve the time sheets for town office versus highway and transfer station. And number 4, sign the select board orders. We'll do that at the end of the session so that we don't keep you guys hanging around all day long. Now, the next is number 5, but I'm going to put these kinds of things, I'm going to delay them just for a minute. I'm going to insert Jeannine in here on the senior solutions, if you would, please.
Yeah?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Jamaica for the contribution that they've been doing to Senior Solution. And I'm just here to sort of inform you of what they have been doing and they're continuing to do. They have made, in the last year, 43 calls. They've received 43 calls where they help people. People call them and they want information on Medicare, they want medication on Social Security, they want medication on housing, fuel, and they give them all that kind of information. They've also helped 10 residents in Jamaica with Medicare Part B and the Advantage Plan. They're very good with that. If you need any help, they're really there. Also, they have delivered 1,014 Meals on Wheels, and they sponsor the monthly senior luncheon at the church here. And we usually have, I'm the coordinator there, we usually have between 18 we've had up to 30 people come to the senior luncheon, which is really nice, and you're all invited to come. They do help with transportation, but they haven't had any calls for that here. And what they do also, they do case management and advocacy. They've helped 6 elder residents in Jamaica where they go into their homes and they help them with the things that they need, maybe getting help so that they can stay in their home. They've given 66 hours, over 66 hours. And so Jamaica has been giving $600 a year to the association. And what happens with the monies that they get from these small towns, they usually get a grant of the same amount. But there's something else that they're starting now. At the last meeting I went to, there's a man by the name of John Hager, and he's the commander of the American Legion Post 5 in Brattleboro. And what he is trying to do, and the Senior Solution is really working with them. As a matter of fact, they now have a veteran by the name of John Lear, who comes from the RSVP. It's a volunteer program. and they're trying to coordinate, and they're calling it Vet for Vet program. It's a program for the veterans, and it's not a program, it's not charity or anything like that. What it is they find that there are a lot of senior vets, and maybe they're home, they don't have company, and they feel that the most important thing that they could have is another vet talking to them. Like this Lear, Al, he said that when he goes once a week, he visits the veterans, he'll take them to lunch at the Legions, and he'll go shopping with them. And sometimes all they want to do really is talk to someone that can really, really understand where they're coming from. So Senior Solution is trying to get involved with that. I suggested, and I'm really going to push for it very much at Senior Solution, that what Senior Solution should do in our monthly luncheon, that we should dedicate November solely for the veterans. And maybe invite as many veterans as we can and do a very nice luncheon, and maybe we can not have them pay for their lunch. And I am going to, as the co-president of the Benefit Association, I'm going to ask this benefit to maybe sponsor this. And that's about it, really. And I thank you for giving me the time.
Well, we thank you for all the work you do in the neighborhoods and around here, because clearly there's a need.
Well, I think so. I was very excited by it.
Yeah.
You know, I know that one year, or maybe it was about 8 or 9 years ago, the Senior Solution Luncheon happened to be right on Veterans Day. And what we did was we started calling a whole lot of veterans, and we invited them. And we had quite a few veterans who came. And as a matter of fact, we had, you might remember his name. He lived near the Joe Grannis in a little house.
Oh, yeah, I do remember who he is. You might not remember his name.
He was, he lived in a cabin, and he passed away. He was a veteran.
Pete?
Oh, no, it's a very funny name, and I can never remember. But in any case, he came, and he had a wonderful story to tell, because he was on a boat on D-Day, and he was very instrumental, and one of the boats sank, and he told the story of, and my husband remembered reading about him in a book, where he actually got the people on his boat to save. And then we had all different, your husband came and he spoke, and we had a few people, and so that's what I'm going to push for. And that's it, really, nothing else. But it's a good organization. It really, really is a wonderful Senior Solution.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Good point. Okay, number 5, progress on the bids for the ceiling of the town hall. Okay,
Here we go.
welcome to the, I have,
Mass confusion.
yeah,
I actually have made a copy actually, Tom's not here. We take one, pass it on. These are the different prices that I have gotten from the 4 people who have given me some numbers about doing the building. Actually, I have contacted 6 altogether, so it's not a lack of getting involved with people who do this. And I would like you to look at all 4. Unfortunately, I got involved with the stapler and did too much. So if you want to just spread out the 4 in front of you, it gives you a chance to really look at the different prices. Starting from the top down, we have a price from Maimonides for, let's see, $18,000, and all of the specs are there. Then Ray Wilcox, who is BMW Painters, and that one is for $15,000. The next down is Norm Holden, and his is $6,800. And the last one is Pikes Falls Painting, Jamaica, Vermont, and that's $1,330. So, as you can see, we have a very wide spread. And that's what has been so confusing. All of the specs are there, exactly what they want to do. The major issue that we're running into is the issue of, I can't find the right word. Andy, what's the name of that?
The Moresco
Is the
plaster.
Moresco, yes, is the Moresco. And I think I've talked about this a little bit. It is a powdery substance that develops on either, and I have not been able to figure out whether it is the old plaster that was done for the ceiling, or it is a paint powder that comes from them. But at any rate, it is up there on the ceiling of the town hall, and it's in patches, and the patches are growing more numerous all the time. So that has been the major issue that we have had. And you can see by the amount of money from 18,000 to 1330, there's a wide range, and it's very confusing. I have tried to look it up on the web to see what this Moresco is all about. And basically, it is a powder. Whether it's coming from plaster or paint, that does not seem to be clear. However, because it is an old, is it 1840 building? I think that's the age of that building. It's creating a major problem for us. And I'm presenting this because we need to do something. I have been in touch with the preservation group, and they really know not a whole lot. They've actually sent somebody to me for information about painting. So I'm not finding a whole lot, and of course we have Andy, who is our expert, that can kind of fill us in a little bit, if you could, about what you know about the Moresco.
Well, just some of these bids are addressing getting it clean first, and unfortunately, the highest bid, well, money-wise, unfortunately, seems to be the most, thorough, and sounds the best to me, but I certainly don't want I don't want to influence these bids on anything
No, I know that.
I don't know what the deadline is to look, but maybe I can find out some more about that. I haven't had time to even look online or anything.
Yeah, and I have, and basically, these two groups, Ray Wilcox
Right.
Knows a lot about it, and he talked to me about it. And what he has said basically is that we have to paint, put a primer, and it is an oil compound. I don't know if he goes and explains that here, but that's what he told me, was that 3 coats of compound prime, and then 1 finished coat of paint. Mamani, they are doing also something similar, but they're doing scraping the area.
Right.
And I'm not clear whether he's just going to be scraping the pieces that are loose, or is he going to be scraping the whole ceiling?
He's talking about doing some trim too. Did you want him to do some of the trim? I guess if it's healing, they probably would fix that.
Yeah, I think that's the one maybe out in the hallway, where that's coming off of the wooden part.
Well, when we did plaster years ago, we always oil primed it. And 2 of them, I believe, Raymond and Normandy, said that they would, Raymond doesn't say what kind of primer or what. I knew it would be expensive. I remember when I was away telling you,
Yeah,
I wouldn't be
exactly.
surprised to hear over
Right.
20,000.
Oh, yeah, and so with that in mind, I think the one that is $1,330 might be really,
Do you know when it was done before, if any of these treatments were done for this
No.
Moresco?
it was not, it was just painted.
Yeah. 'cause
And
my-
it was done when they were reconditioning the
Right.
whole
Right,
building
yeah.
interior.
My fear would be that they take the time and effort to do the parts that are peeling and crumbling and chalky now, and then 2 or 3 years, the other part that wasn't done is peeling and chalky.
And I
And if
think-
this is gone for, I mean, 10 years, I mean, almost as much, I mean, it's been 10 years since it was painted, and that's almost what you expect for paint.
Yeah,
That spending $20,000 might need to do it again, and
yeah.
it's a lot for a paint job.
Actually, the Ray Wilcox BMW, he actually is talking about that. He's saying that we feel there are two problems, and he does not guarantee, because he said in 2 years, we might have more peeling again, where it is not peeling right now. The issue is that when the building was reconditioned,
Right.
the people who did paint just literally painted over the ceiling without being aware of what was going on. And now we're kind of having to deal with that. So for me, the question is, do we just go ahead and do it knowing that it's going to happen? It's something that our preservation people want us to do. And,
Can I ask a question?
yes,
Around this Moresco, I'm not clear. Is Moresco something that they put up there, or is Moresco the result of aging of something else?
number 2.
Okay. So we're talking about the Moresco, that's really residue from
Right,
whatever was up there.
yeah,
So that's gotta come down.
yeah,
Well, the first estimate addresses that, like hand washing it down after they spray.
which one is that, the mom?
Harmony.
Okay.
And would that be for the whole thing, or just the parts that are peeling?
The parts that are peeling, because you wouldn't be able to
Right.
wash underneath.
Right.
But I bet I could find out something from Benjamin Moore from the company, because it may have no relevance whatsoever, but they have, I mean, in helping us with a covering. But they had a ceiling paint that was called Best Moresco,
Oh,
you know? We use it all the time on sheet rock. It's just a latex paint. And I wonder, because they use that name, if there would be somebody in Benjamin Moore, Sherwin Williams, that would
yeah.
know more about this Moresco business.
Well, when I was online looking through Moresco, trying to figure it out, all of the different antique, plaster and what happens, that Benjamin Moore kept coming up all the time, as they're the ones who seem to know what to do with it. So,
Well, if we
that
have,
might be,
do we have time till the next meeting?
yeah,
Well, it'll give us time to look this over and give you time to check that out. And
Yeah.
maybe call
Yeah.
next step.
I think three of the bids are good, but I think there needs to be some oil put on any plastic.
yeah, and that's the one that BMW is talking
And
about.
Romney too.
Is he talking
I think
about
they wanna put oil.
oil?
Um,
He's talking eliminate roots and chalk and calcium to
He
expose
says
shear plaster.
He wind dry prime panels with special alkali paint.
Yeah.
Oil to promote adhesion for the current paint. Well, he wants to put it over that too, in any future paint.
Uh-huh.
Then, who else mentioned alkali paint? That was,
BMW says, we feel that there are 2 problems with seeing fluctuating temperature creating expansion. Also, the ceiling may have Moresco on it. It could start peeling anywhere, anytime, etc. Scrape where needed, wash, tape cracks, and apply 3 coats of compound prime. Is that what BMW is saying?
Right.
And 1 finish coat of paint. He seemed to, both of these two, the higher price ones seemed to really know. Let's see, how about Holden? Prep materials, patching, plaster, sandpaper.
It does say primer,
Yes.
whatever the word is.
S-E?
Sealer, a primer sealer.
Oh, sealer, is that what that is?
I'm guessing.
Yeah, back to Raymond, BMW.
Yeah,
He's trying to, I think, avoid future problems by, the scrape where it's needed, obviously, wash it to get that powder off, and then, I mean, I'm ad-libbing here.
yeah,
Paraphrase, but tape cracks, that means he's gonna put tape, drywall tape, and apply 3 coats of compound. So every one of those panels he's gonna make look like finished sheetrock, and
Yeah.
then prime it and put 1 coat of finished paint on.
yeah.
So that would, if we could get the compound to stick to the plaster, that's where he's coming from, which is another good idea.
Yeah.
They've been at it since the early 60s.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
And his price, of course, is 15,000
I think both
compared
of
to
those.
18.
2 prices, maybe they're, kind of have a little more experience with. If I had to guess, both of these companies have been around a long time,
Yeah,
and so is Norman.
yes. They're New Fame painters. I did not get a quote from, and another painter in Jamaica, I did not get a quote. Pricing. So that's the story.
Well, okay, so let's make sure that we have time to take these home and go over, make sure we're apples to apples. You're gonna check on that.
I know, I could talk to this, a couple of contractors I know who are, one's a drywall outfit and they have a guy that plasters, and another guy, who knows more about plaster than I do. I've been working over at the church, and that
Yeah.
plaster over there has has hair in it.
Uh-huh,
I think that's different than what's happening,
yeah,
what was used here,
right.
so.
Yeah,
It's
'cause I
different
think those
plasters,
buildings
is-
are about the same time, I think. Isn't the church around 1840?
I was just reading when it was sold, it used to be the town hall, and it
Yeah.
was sold as a church, but
Yeah,
I didn't see when it was built.
yeah, I could be really wrong, but I know it's the early 1800s, so.
Lots to digest.
I think it could be fixed if there's not moisture above it all,
Mhm.
but, you know, someone's gonna take the time to set staging up and go at that for some, you know, it's an expense. Or maybe Norman Holden painting, he may be able to do it for that. I'm not sure, yeah. Just asked a couple questions that I really didn't have time to
Yeah. And I-
since the last meeting. I didn't know you found out a lot more anyway.
Yeah, I try to go in online and look at different things, all sorts of paint companies I've been involved with locally and nationwide, but they really do not address that, so I think it's kind of a, where there are historical issues, problems, so. So if, I guess, if you don't mind doing that.
No.
And then,
Just
come
like I
back
said, I
and
know a
let us
couple of
know.
guys I would trust to ask a couple of questions without,
Okay,
they wouldn't expect to be compensated for it.
Then we get together the next session, which is the 8th of April, I think.
The only other thing another thought would be, except for that detailed trim up there, is it could be replastered.
Just replaster the whole thing,
That might be a little expense too.
Yeah.
more so than painting it.
Does anybody do that?
Well, it's just that it would be hard in between all those panels.
Yes,
And
right.
you'd lose some of the definition, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a point, yeah. I was looking at, when we were over there, and I'm looking at that, that's a chore.
Yes, it is a chore, because
It's
the
beautiful, see?
the panels are probably no longer than this,
Sure, yes.
and about this wide, and the whole ceiling is just covered. And it's, how many feet? I think we have that measurement.
Big.
Oh, no, that's the height of it, so 18.4 is the height from floor to ceiling.
Just to make it any easier.
And I think it's close to
That's,
maybe 30 feet, 40 feet long. Would that be a guess?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then all of those little panels are
It's gonna be labor
the entire
intensive.
ceiling.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you will check on that.
Okay, that
We all
would
have
be
these
great.
to take home
Yeah,
and
take
try to
these.
do apples to apples.
Yeah,
And we'll try to make some sense out of it.
and try to work on coming to a conclusion.
Sure. And just in case the question comes up regarding our procurement policy, it's very difficult to just open sealed bids on service, these kinds of services, and pick one based on the quantity, because it's very difficult, as you're finding out, to match all these things, apple to oranges. Some decisions need to be made on how to go forward. And so this fits into the service end of our procurement policy, which doesn't require us to do sealed bids and move forward like that. So we're operating okay with our
Okay,
procurement
that's
policy.
good, yeah.
But, so, that's the only thing we've got going for us, is we get to take a look and try to do an apples to apples comparison.
That's why I wanted to print all of them out, so
Yes.
each of you could look at them and digest.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have anything more while I've got you, how are you on the floor, about the sills? When Stuart's going to attack that?
Oh, no, I have not gotten any word. I know it's going to be before the beginning of July.
Okay. And I'm trying to think, what do we have going on over there? I've got to look at the calendar, and Sarah's got the calendar, if there's anything going on that we should build into that.
Yeah, I don't think that should be, my understanding, because it has to be braced and all of that,
Yeah.
that you can still have activities in,
Well, what we'll do is we'll get an idea of what's planned,
yeah.
and give it to him, and then he can factor that in as well.
So,
All right.
good idea.
Okay. Oh, number 6, we had when we were doing the appointments last time, I had sent a letter to our 911 coordinator. And it turns out that we never got an answer. Well, it turns out there was a reason for that, because I left a letter out in the address. So apparently there's another Erica Bowman floating around out there who got a letter from me, and we don't know where that is. In any case, I talked to her on the phone. She is interested in continuing as a 911 coordinator. So we've been working on a particular case that's come up, and I would entertain the idea is to continue or to reappoint Erica as the 911 coordinator. She gave me an explanation of what's going on with these things, and that's why one of the problems we're having was having problems. And this is far more complicated than I realized.
is she the same Erica
Yeah.
as I dealt with Wyndham Regional?
No, this Erica Bowman lives up on Meadows, up on
May have
Bowery.
Erica's mixed up.
Yeah, this Erica is Rob Wilson's wife.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, sorry.
Okay, so have too many Ericas in your life.
3.
Oh my God, you should cut
Now,
down.
now there's 3.
You should cut down on that. So, do we have, is that, do we vote on all these people? Or I'd like to reappoint Erica Bowman. Do we have a consensus?
Sure.
Sure, sounds like an aye to me.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. I will let her know. I will send the information, now that I have the correct address. Now, we have been blessed with a very active planning commission. I have no idea where they get their energy. However, they seem to have some source. And they have recently produced some new Act 250 procedures. for how the town handles Act 250 applications. And these were all sent out to you guys electronically. I hope you've had a chance to read them. I have one question, but when we get to it, we can get to the question. But would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you.
Introduce yourself to the camera.
Several months ago, several,
Yeah.
sorry. Oh,
I know
I'm
who you are,
sorry.
the camera does.
Sorry, Chris Robbins, I'm a member of the Jamaica Planning Commission.
Right, good.
Several months ago, the commission appointed me as the Act 250 administrator. And in all naivete, I asked Charlie, what does an Act 250 administrator do? So he told me, and it's a lot. This was kind of a deer in the headlights moment for me and I guess the rest of the commission. So we decided to write these procedures, both to educate ourselves and to serve as something to hand on to our successors so the corporate memory wouldn't get lost. Act 250 was enacted in 1970 when Vermont was undergoing significant development pressure. This was when Interstate 91 was being built and they were worried about development along the highway being out of control. It's a quasi-legal process for review and management of permitting process for significant developments. And it's supposed to consider their environmental, their social, and their fiscal consequences. There's an accompanying Act 250 program with the objectives to review applications under the statutory criteria, conduct jurisdictional reviews to see whether you need a permit or not, to assist permit applicants and also other parties to the permit. They are supposed to assist in compliance, and if you don't comply, perform enforcement. There are 10 criteria for judging the granting of a permit, and these briefly are air and water pollution, water supply, impact on water supply, erosion, traffic and transportation, educational services, municipal services, aesthetics, scenic and natural beauty, impacts on growth, and most importantly, town and regional plans. Turns out that the regulatory language in our town plan is mandatory to be followed but in the permitting process, so it's quite important. And this list is expanded in the Appendix A of this document. It gives quite a bit. The state is divided into 9 districts. We're in District 2, which is Wyndham and part of Windsor County. There is a district coordinator that handles all the administrative details of Act 250, including issuing administrative permits. There's an environmental commission, which holds hearings for more complicated or serious cases. And then, of course, there's the environmental court that hears appeals. I handed out tables, and Table 1 goes through the different types of Act 250 proceedings and the possible actions that can be taken, both what the district coordinator does and what the town's potential actions are. The first is the project review sheets. These are determination or provisionary determination of the types of permits that are needed for any sort of project, including Act 250, but not exclusively Act 250 permits. And there's nothing to be done about them except they're an important heads up. If it is a big project or one that we think is going to have a major impact on the town, it's a warning to us to get our act together and be ready for it. Administrative amendments are amendments to existing permits. No action is required. However, Or if we think there's a significant error in them, or we can file a motion to alter, which would bump it up to one of the more significant reviews. And of course, if we don't like that, we can appeal to the environmental court. And on appeal, I should say right at the beginning, they usually don't succeed. So unless there's a major error in fact or law, you know, it's not really worth the effort. But it's in here for the sake of completeness. Minor reviews are the next type, and these are issued administratively. A draft permit is issued when the administrator thinks there are no insurmountable conflicts with the 10 criteria, no widespread public concern. The actions, one important thing about these is there's a 20-day time limit to respond. So hence the importance of the project review sheets. We've got it, we can't dawdle. We can elect to do nothing, or we can comment, including ask for more conditions that would be associated with it if we think it's necessary, or we can request that the type be bumped up to a major review. And then, of course, the appeal is one of the actions if we don't like, if we find a problem with what they've done. And then the final one is a major review in which the administrator thinks that there's going to be a significant conflict with one of the 10 criteria or, you know, major public concern. In this case, they hold one or more hearings in the town to discuss it. And after the hearing, they can issue either a hearing recess memorandum, in which if they're going to hold another hearing, or a recess memorandum with a deadline to respond by the town. And the town can do nothing. We can participate in the hearing. We can offer oral testimony. We can provide written comments. We have to follow the recess memorandum directives, which they'll tell us how to go about it. And if we are going to contest something, we should engage all possible resources, which means the select board and the planning commission have to work together to be effective. We can enlist the aid of the Wyndham Regional Council, state agencies. We probably should hire consultants, attorneys, and expert witnesses if there's a case to be made, which means we'll have to spend money, basically. So you must be involved. There will be a hearing before the Environmental Commission, and if we don't like, if we find error, we can appeal. But not liking the result is not really a sound basis for appeal. Both the Planning Commission and the Select Board are independent statutory parties to any Act 250 proceeding, which means we conceivably both could follow these proceedings acting independently, not necessarily in a coherent manner. So that brings me to the next table is we're proposing a model of how the Planning Commission and Select Board should work.
Can I ask a quick question here?
Yeah.
You just tapped on something. As I read this, I was surprised to hear that it sounds, as I read the full one, that the Planning Commission and the Select Board have equal statute before the Commission.
That's right.
Yes.
By state law and town charter. It's quite explicit.
Yeah, I read that, and I'm thinking that sounds a little odd to me, because in pretty much all other Planning Commission activities, the Select Board makes the decisions, you guys make the recommendations. And if you're saying that you can go off on your own on this one.
It surprised me too. Although we're equal, you're probably more equal in that you can fire us if you don't like what we're doing. And
Careful, Chris.
also, if money's involved, you have to approve it.
Well, that was the next part I was gonna ask, because whichever happens, the select board has purse strings. Planning commission does not. So I would think that would sort of color how I can't picture it happening, but as I'm reading this and I understand all the possibilities that are supposed to be considered, that's one of them. That would be tricky.
Well, I don't know what to say because it kind of surprised me too.
You read it-
That is what,
read it.
that is the law.
I would like to make a comment, and it's not going to be a positive comment. I have been involved in an Act 250. I think I was on the planning commission at the time. I discovered, and I think most of us who were involved with the town, felt that we were really not heard very much. That the Act 250 group that comes in, they have it in their heads about how things are going to go. We can state our opinions, but we really don't have much power at all with that. Now, I don't know if you concur with that. I'm sure you're going to argue against me on that one, but that has been my experience.
Oh.
There he goes.
I don't want to argue against you. I just want to be recognized.
Introduce yourself to the camera. You're right.
I'm Charlie Peck. I'm a former member of the Jamaica Planning Commission and served as town's representative to the Wyndham Regional Commission for quite a few years. Served on the Wyndham Regional Commission's Project Review Committee and have developed a lot of Act 250 testimony for both the Wyndham Regional Commission and the town of Jamaica over the years. I've participated in a number of town of Jamaica involvement with Act 250 projects in the town of Jamaica and with the Stratton Resort. And I understand what Judy's saying and I understand where she's coming from, and that is an experience that sometimes happens. But I want to say that it usually happens because the town is not well prepared and does not know how to effectively participate in the process and how to effectively be heard. And I think that the Planning Commission is now on the right track and is doing a good thing in trying to increase the level of awareness on all the members of the Select Board and all the members of the Planning Commission as to exactly what Act 250 is, how it works, and how the town can best cooperate and coordinate its own efforts so that we can be well prepared when we do have to deal with an Act 250 proceeding, and we'll know better how to effectively communicate with the District Environmental Commission and make our point as well as it can possibly be made. But you can't make something out of nothing. And if the town sentiment or the sentiment of citizens in the town is a feeling that this particular project or some aspect of it is very bad or detrimental to the town and we don't want to see it happen and we'd like to argue against it, those arguments are often not effective unless there is clear and effective regulatory language already in the town plan. That's an important part of the whole process, is matching the language in the town plan with the result that the town wishes to achieve. It's quite a complex process, and I definitely don't want to state that Judy's wrong, because I think she did have that valid experience and her frustration was real. But I think the cause is mostly a lack of understanding of how the process works and how to effectively say what we want to say in order to be heard as well as we can be.
Oh, I hope that
I know.
what you're saying is really going to happen, and I think maybe with the activity that's going on at the Planning Commission level, that may well be what happens, but that was my experience. And
So you had a bad experience, and the town has had some bad experiences and some good experiences. We do have some weaknesses, I believe, in our town plan, and I think the Planning Commission is aware of that, and we'll be trying to correct some of that.
I hope
I think-
that does happen.
Yep, the town has,
So we do have a voice.
we definitely do, and the town has participated effectively in Act 250 proceedings in the past. It's usually been difficult for the Select Board, much more so than the Planning Commission, because in the past, Act 250 applications with serious problems have suddenly surfaced with apparently they're coming in out of left field with no warning whatsoever. The select board is quite unprepared, and the planning commission is also at least partially unprepared and really not in a position to be able to help the select board and work together cooperatively. So that's what the planning commission is trying to do now, is to formalize a procedure and a process where when this hits you out of left field and you feel blindsided and you don't know what to do, the document that Chris has presented you will help you and future select boards. You'll have something you can fall back on. Oh, didn't we write something about that a few years ago? Can't we go look and see this document? Doesn't it say all over it, if you don't know what to do, call Charlie Peck?
Yeah. One of the things that I've found to be the case with an awful lot of the work I've done with FEMA over the last 8 years, and it sounds like, and I may be wrong, I can't remember exactly which particular group this affected us the most with, but is it not true that we get, I think the phrase they use is substantial deference?
No, that's not true in Act 250.
It doesn't have, what I'm saying was, they gave us that because we were prepared, because we had written procedures. And I gather that's what this will do for us, but you're saying no.
No, this will not change. This may help to improve the town's ability to be well prepared for Act 250 proceedings, and for the select board and the planning commission to be able to work better together to implement the town plan. The planning commission and the select board have to work together to develop the town plan. And one of the strongest and most effective tools available for implementing the town plan is the Act 250 process, if it's used correctly. That's what the Planning Commission is aiming at here, but this will not change the way Act 250 works. And the concept of substantial deference, which does apply in certain Public Utility Commission proceedings, among others, and does sometimes apply in certain types of interactions with FEMA, is not related to the Act 250 process. It's different and separate. The town does have, both the select board and the planning commission do have full party status with the same legal rights and responsibilities as all the other parties, including the applicant or the owner of the property who's seeking the permit. You're all in there together on equal footing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Quick questions, Chris. This is more, this isn't anything to do with the re-envisioning of Act 250. This is something, this is kind of, okay, that's what I thought.
This is how
it is now. And so you've taken, the planning commission's taken some steps to simplify these many years of documents into something that can help guide us.
No, it was many years of no documents.
Oh, no, but Act 250 has Act 250 has many years of documents.
Yes,
So you boiled this down into, an overview of 10 pages and then also a table, just to help guide us, like you said, Chris. So we're not gonna be surprised.
The text in the proceeding is kind of wordy and kind of a slog, I think, and so I put that together.
Yeah.
Oh, parenthetically, are you the one that compiled this legal brief towards the end?
Oh, no, Charlie did that.
I'm looking this thing over and I said, where'd you guys find a lawyer? There's a lot of work.
That from Charlie.
I want to state for the record that I'm not an attorney, and I can't give you bona fide legal advice. I have significant paralegal experience and a lot of experience with Act 250.
Well, I went through this, and of course, I spent a little bit of my previous life in courts, and I'm looking this over and thinking, this looks like it was done by a lawyer to me, so even if you were faking it, as long as you're not faking the billing procedure, we're happy.
Honestly, I'm really trying very hard not to fake anything. I'm playing it straight, believe it or not.
Yeah, page 2.
I was going to go off script for a minute and talk about the importance of the town plan and answer your question, but Charlie said everything I could possibly think of about it, so.
Yeah, I think what happened was that we were totally unprepared.
Well,
And all of a sudden, we're sitting at the table with all of these people from the state.
This is an attempt to fix that.
And it looked like a good shot at it, because I was a lot smarter when I got through reading it than when I started.
some few meetings ago, we came before you and asked if the town wouldn't reconsider its approach to zoning regulations. And considering it after that, I think, and what I've learned since then, it might be going back and revisiting the land use section of the town plan to make sure that things we think are important are expressed in regulatory language would accomplish most of what we had in mind in the first place.
And I
And
think
maybe
that
avoid
was a
the,
lot of what we ran into, that things were not in the town plan as our backup.
yeah, well, I
What
think
you're
we should
saying
do
is-
that.
Then the magic word, of course, regulatory language.
Well, yeah, and that's, as far as I can tell, there's only one regulatory statement in the town plan, and that's ridgeline development's prohibited. Everything else is advisory.
There are a couple of others, Chris, but the language is sort of hodgepodge, and it would, the town plan would benefit from careful scrutiny. And actually, Chris and indirectly the rest of the planning commission is asking to work on that on their behalf, and I am in the process of drafting a report to the planning commission discussing exactly what regulatory language is, what is the legal definition, what makes language in a town plan regulatory. It is too complex and lengthy a subject to go into in detail here tonight, but I have been studying it for quite a few years, and I'm researching it again to prepare a document for the planning commission to help them in their assessment of the town plan and what language in the town plan is and what is not regulatory.
Well,
It's a very important and complex subject that every member of the planning commission and select board should be well informed on, but it's quite reasonable that you're not.
Well, the work you put into that section here that I just referred to earlier clarifies your position to the extent that the way we phrase things sounds good while we're sitting around, but when you get in front of the regulatory committee, it's kindergarten talk.
Yeah, well, that's a good way, that's a good informal way to put it. I think that's accurate.
Okay, thank you very
Although
much.
the district commissions are appointed by the governor, and they are regular, ordinary citizens. They live among us, they're business people and regular folks, and they don't think or act in a demeaning manner towards towns. They're not going to privately or snidely snicker about your kindergarten approach, because the process under the legislators that drafted Act 250 more than 50 years ago now understood very well that it's a process that is to be administered by citizens without a lot of detailed legal training for the benefit of other citizens without a lot of detailed legal training. And although there's a large legal envelope has been built around the process over the years, it isn't as totally indecipherable as one might think when you first try to get a grasp on it.
Well, it'll be good to have a guide to guide us through.
Well, the critically important thing in this document that Chris has brought to you tonight, or sent to you a few weeks ago, is a new idea in the town of Jamaica. And that is that if the select board is agreeable, and I, as a citizen, I strongly recommend that you should be agreeable to this, because I think it would benefit the board and the planning commission and the town. But if the select board and the planning commission are agreeable to doing it, this lays out a process where the select board, which has separate and equal authority to participate as a party, and the planning commission, which has separate and equal authority to participate, both the board and the commission have a clear responsibility to the town to both act responsibly and wisely, and to do their best to implement the provisions of the town plan that we all feel we have agreed upon. So the purpose of this is to set forward a process where the planning commission will bring these issues to your attention as they come forward with as much advance notice as possible. And this is to alert you that the planning commission proposes a formal joint interaction and a strong effort for the board and the commission to reach a combined, unified position instead of going off in different directions and potentially canceling out each other's influence. That's new for Jamaica. I think it's very important. I think it would have benefited the town in the past when these situations have come up if we'd had something like this in place. So not only did I help to write it, but I'm here to advocate that it's a good idea.
You can't have that.
I think I've probably made my point 10 times.
You probably have.
Request permission to shut up.
Not yet, we're not done. Yes.
But
Chris.
he still has one.
So table 2 just breaks the proposed method of cooperation down for the different types of proceedings. And for the project review sheets, there's nothing really, I'm supposed to review them and notify you that we've received one with an Act 250 requirement if it includes one. And there's nothing that needs to be done, but if we think it's going to be significant, we can start to get our approach together before the permit's issued. In the case of administrative amendments, normally there's nothing to be done, but it's possible that we can decide what to collaborate on a coordinated response if we think there needs to be a motion to alter or appeal for that matter. Or it's possible we could proceed independently if we can't agree. It's pretty much the same for the minor review. The Planning Commission administrator will need to inform the select board. We can do nothing if there's nothing to be done, or we can initiate an action from table 1 in coordination with you, and we could form a joint working group if necessary, or it could be, you could just say, well, okay, keep me informed. And, or you could do nothing, or you could proceed independently. And in the case of the major review, there's really no way we're not going to act in collaborate. I think we'll have to respond to the memorandum to adjourn or the recess memorandum. And I can't imagine that we wouldn't want to form a working group to coordinate preparation of testimony and any written input. Although, again, if we can't agree on an approach, we can both, by statute, proceed independently. I've submitted this draft to the Wyndham Regional Commission, and it was very well reviewed. And in fact, they said they'd like to use it as a model to form a generic version to hand out to the other towns. And they'd also like us to submit it to the district coordinator, Stephanie Giles is her name, for her comments, and invite us to attend a meeting with them to discuss how we can work together on Act 250 matters. So what happened to you doesn't happen to us. And I told them, well, yeah, we'll do all that, but I want to hear from my select board whether they'll go for this model of cooperation or not before we do. So that's what I'm here asking for.
Gotcha. So, well, the other thing I'd say in the sidebar, make sure you get a good guess on what they're going to pay you as a retainer. On page 7, I have 2 questions. The first one is on the Planning Commission responsibility. It says the District Environmental Commission will email all project review sheets and notifications of Act 250 permit applications with supporting documentation for developments in Jamaica and surrounding towns that may impact Jamaica to the chair of the Jamaica Planning Commission, period. It just says it will email it. That sentence doesn't say to whom it's going to be emailed. Having said that, the next sentence suggests, it says to the chair of the Jamaica Planning Commission. What's not clear is, to me, I believe what they're doing now is they're emailing it to the town clerk, not to you guys.
They email it to Rebecca.
Is she getting it as well? Because we're getting a hard copy in the mail.
Oh,
Yeah, I can tell you why, Paul. And the reason is that the district coordinator who's responsible for doing this, a woman named Stephanie Dial, is very experienced in her job, and knows what she's doing, and is required to submit legal service to all the potential parties to any Act 250 proceeding. She knows that both the town select board and the town planning commission are both statutory parties. Okay. So she must deliver copies of all relevant documents she must make her best effort anyway, to deliver all relevant documents to both parties So the select board is getting copies addressed, sent to the town clerk, intended for the information of the select board as a party. And the planning commission is getting duplicates currently sent to the chairperson of the planning commission.
I was not aware that it was going to the planning commission. I was aware it was coming to us, and as near as I could tell from what I saw, was under the heading of do nothing. I've got skills and talents in that area, so I just used them. But this sounded to me like it was not going through the procedures that it was my understanding we're already doing. But as long as there's a parallel line, and she's getting it as well, so you're not going to be surprised. So if it hits the town clerk's desk, it's meant for the select board. You guys already have a copy. We don't then, therefore, need to let you know, although it sounds, as we read on, that we ought to be cross-pollinating.
Yes.
You don't have to cross-pollinate with that, but as soon as you both get the notice, and as soon as you, Paul, decide in your capacity as being responsible for deciding which of these issues needs to be referred to the full board and which it doesn't, I hear what you're saying when you say that you're really good at doing nothing, and that is in fact what most towns reasonably and prudently do, because very often doing nothing turns out to be the wisest and best course. But when you suddenly reach the horrifying conclusion that, uh-oh, this doesn't look good, looks like we ought to do something, the question becomes, what?
Yeah. And this clarifies, I mean, truthfully, this is a road map to that situation. Yeah. Oh, the other little thing, I know you're gonna hate me. This is actually a compliment. On page 17, for those of you following at home, first paragraph, I apologize up front, but take it as a compliment. Read this whole damn thing, I have one silly little typo. The sentence says, thus, if a town plan approves a project, project can only be denied under, I think the word it is misplaced, misspelled, or misconstrued. A project, project. Or leave the word project out. Some little tiny thing.
I
that's gonna
think
slip
maybe
by.
one of the multiple proofreaders might have slipped up, and I'm probably at least one of the proofreaders that's guilty of that. Thank you
Having
for
said that,
pointing that out.
considering is between Sarah and I, we proofread each other's stuff, so we get tested at least once or twice a week. That's it. Boy, I went through this thing, and that's all I could find. I wasn't looking for it, but it turned out. Congratulations on a job well done. Any other questions? Does this make sense to you guys?
For sure, thank you. It's
Yeah.
awesome. A lot of time in there.
There's not anything in the wind, is there?
No,
An Act 250?
Not that we know of, but we will probably, it's likely that there will be, and it's likely that we will not receive a lot of advance notice. When there's a very big project, like a major expansion at the Stratton Resort, which I don't anticipate because I think they've about expanded to their economic and other limits, but that sort of thing, you're likely to hear about it long in advance. But there are important Act 250 issues that occasionally come up, and the town will have very little time in which to figure out how best to respond. And this framework is an effort to make that scramble a little bit easier and a little bit better organized.
I have to tell you, as somebody who struggled over what they could do with these forms hit before in the past, reading this is like, I wish I'd had this a couple of years ago. So.
Paul, if you'd like a detailed explanation of why it is that the legislature decided to grant equal party status to both the select board and the planning commission, I can give that to you, but I don't want to take up a lot more time at this meeting doing that. I know the attorney who actually drafted the original statute. Yeah, I've been involved with and following Act 250 for about 50 years now. And I do know the answer, but I just don't want to give it to you tonight because you've got a lot of stuff to do. You write me, you call me up, you pester me about it, I will tell you the answer.
I trust you, but gotcha. All right, so actually, I think what you're asking us to do is to review it and to, do we need to vote to adapt it? I believe we do.
Yeah, I would think so.
I think we want to.
I don't think so.
I think an expression of consensus that the board agrees, is in agreement, that it wishes to try to reach a coordinated response. The board wishes to work with the planning commission. There have been occasions in Jamaica's historic past, and there have been occasions in other towns, where for various reasons, the select board at certain important times has declined to participate, unable or unwilling to participate or to use its statutory authority. That could happen again, but I think what the Planning Commission is seeking for you to do tonight is just to informally say, we hear what you're saying, the four of you that are in attendance tonight are in agreement that it's a good idea to try hard to work together and reach a unified position, and you support that concept.
Well, couldn't we do that before this?
What do you mean?
Before this?
We could have,
There's nothing.
if we knew what we were doing. So this is just codifying what the best practices are. Before, when the paperwork hit me, and I'm looking at this, I didn't have a clue what to do with it, we just kind of tap danced around. Luckily, it was one of those do-nothing things, which I'm so good at, inherently good at.
If you pick them right, that works. But man, it's
It doesn't.
awfully annoying when you miss it,
This one.
and then it comes up and bites you.
One, it'll bite you. But, yeah, so we're not really changing anything, it's just giving us a guideline and a plan.
This is something, Andy, this is something that I envision this as a document that the Planning Commission will hang on to, and the Select Board should keep in a file, the town clerk should be aware that it exists. It's something you can look back at. A future board who feels suddenly blindsided by an important Act 250 issue, and we don't know what to do. Well, wait a minute, we've got this procedure that gives us lots of clues about what to do and how we should do it.
Yeah.
It gives us clues about who to talk with and who to talk to and how to go about coming up with a unified and rational and workable response.
But I think what you're saying, maybe, I don't want to put words, I mean, it's always been this way, other than now it's on a two-sheeter to simplify it for all of us who aren't looking at this every day.
Yeah.
And it's nothing new, it's just codified.
There's absolutely nothing new
Yeah.
here except a formal effort coming from the Planning Commission to say, hi, Select Board, we're partners in this. The legislature has thrown us together and given us equal status in a potentially very important situation. And the Planning Commission would like to shake hands and announce its intention that its statement here is it's very important to the town, to the Planning Commission and the Select Board, for the board and the commission to work together. That's the point. At least that's the point as I see it.
And so we could, just simply offer a consensus of support without getting into formal motion.
If you were so kind and agreeable, you could.
Well, I've supported the planning commission's efforts and all that you've done anyway. That's where I understand that this is something, tangible to look at.
It just-
A guy like me might be able
You know,
to figure out. but-
Were you to object to anything here, I would not forward this to Stephanie Giles and not go forward with meeting with the Act 250 and try to rewrite it to accommodate whatever your concerns were. But if you like it, fine.
No, I think I understand that you're asking us to kind of review it prior to moving it forward.
Right.
And from what I'm able to gather, we are all pretty much in support of your efforts. Okay. So as a select board, we encourage you, we thank you for your efforts and press on. And thank you for playing those 2 little questions we had. And a tremendous amount of effort to put this thing together, it's incredible. But once again, you guys have managed to impress the heck out of
It's all Chris's fault.
me.
It would not have happened.
Done it again.
Chris had not initiated it.
Yeah, he's
Forced
the
it forward.
primary.
Sure, but it's not too bad having a resource like you hanging around in the background.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
That could be a two-headed monster, Paul.
Has been in the past, but we're going to take it one day at a time. All righty, so let's move on to the next item. We have a liquor license renewal application. One of our select board people, I'm going to vote on this one, but I think it's really obvious. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Hey,
Thank you
back
very
and
much.
see you anytime.
You want to go, you can go too.
Unless this is entertaining.
You're quite welcome. You probably know, Paul.
I know you enjoy
Before,
this.
it's not always easy for me to actually get here physically.
I know that.
But you know how to get in touch with me. I know this now. You have absolutely no excuse, sir. Except for your own lame failure to act.
Son of a gun.
Lame
Yeah. He's human. He's just like me. He has his lame failures.
Yeah. Since I'm doing mine on camera twice a week.
Yeah, but he's, all right. Well, I believe I know you well enough to understand that you know where I'm coming from, and you know where I live, and you know how to get hold of me if you have
Exactly.
questions about Act 250.
It's nice to have somebody who has our back.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, so, we have a liquor license renewal. We have this from the Blue Dot Beverages Look, which is Blue Dot Beverages Look LLC. DBA Muleman's Craft and Drafts. There's a check, in fact, it should be 2 checks, right? Yeah, there's 2 checks for, yep,
Are they any good?
I don't know.
Trying. Yeah.
So do we as a select board have any issues with accepting and renewing the application?
I don't.
Hearing
Where
none?
is Blue Dot?
Huh?
Where is
Where
it?
did the name Blue Dot come from?
Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, it's actually a Carl Sagan quote.
Uh-oh.
it's a what?
Carl Sagan quote, and it just came to us when we were forming our partnership. Pat and
Oh,
I.
this is yours?
This is us.
Ah.
So that's what Earth looks like from distance out in the universe, a small blue dot. So we figured we were just a small blue dot in the whole world of.
Poetic.
That's really cool.
All right, we'll sign it. Okay, so we all have to sign, approve or disapprove. We'll cycle this through with the other things at the end of the session. All in favor of renewing this, say aye.
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 Do we have to give a second or first and a second? You know?
Somebody
That
somebody
works.
make a motion.
Yes, let me make a motion.
I
What?
move
Okay.
that
I kinda set
we
it up.
accept the application from Blue Dot for a liquor license.
Renewal.
I'll second it, but I gotta ask you something.
Further
Question
question?
2, do we have quorum?
Yes, we have
Without
3 of
your
us.
vote?
3, yeah.
Without Tom?
Right, we only
Yeah.
need 3.
Sure?
Yeah,
Yeah,
3 is a quorum.
Yes.
yeah, out of 5.
3 out of 5. So that's all we need. So if you guys are on
All
board.
voting in the positive.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if one of us change our mind, he'd be out of luck. He'd punish us. Okay, so we'll go ahead, when we're signing things tonight, we will sign that list. Okay,
All those in favor say
all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Good. Any opposed?
Thank you.
You didn't know how much work you have sitting in that chair.
$70.
Okay, now we have a question that's a little bit tougher. In fact, I'm not exactly sure how to approach it. We have, what's that?
I said not I.
No. Real quick, we have some overweight permits that came in, they were on the, but since we decided to just hand them directly to the road
Getting a lot of.
commissioner, boom, right to you. The question for on number 9 is the sign ordinance administrator. We have a sign ordinance, which it's got some rough spots, but we don't have an administrator. So a lot of the things the ordinance is telling us to do, we don't have somebody to do it. So we need to decide what we're gonna do. I was hoping to have Tom here since you and Tom worked on this together as often.
Yes, yep.
So that we have a consensus of how best to move on this.
And our main takeaway, or that because of, in some situations, the select board acts as the administrator, but the select board also is the judiciary group, so to speak, in this process. So if there is something does get appealed, it would get appealed to us, so we cannot act in our own, there needs to be a breakdown.
In theory, the person who's the administrator could recuse himself from that particular procedure if we needed to do it that way, because
Yeah, and I see that, I mean, from having put this together, one, we don't have a whole lot of sign requests. I mean, maybe in the future we would, but currently we don't. And secondly, there's enough of opportunity to fall back and ask questions. I mean, most of the time it's very administrative. It's just like, okay, we've received a permit, we've got a $30 check or whatever, it was 25, I think. And okay, it gets recorded and that's fine, it meets all the criteria. And it comes then before us to, if it.
well, yeah, that was kind of the, we're hoping to go
I mean, I think it's simple, but.
until we got a complaint.
Yeah, well, we're talking sign, aren't we?
No.
SIGN, we're talking sign.
Yeah,
And we have some problems within the community around sizes of signs and where they're posted, and so the person would be the administrator, and then bring the difficulties to us. Is that correct? Is that how you're seeing it?
Well, the way it's designed, the administrator will take, first of all, it's got to design a form, because it says the select board will produce a form, and we haven't done that. Then that will be pursued with the sign administrator, and that he would then meet with the petitioner
Right.
and work out the details.
Right.
Well, now we have people who have signed up that we're getting some feedback back from. We don't have an administrator who return that. We have to bring him here. And then the question, as I'm reviewing it, how does this person know what the ordinance says? How does he even know that they're supposed to be, chase the ordinance down? I mean, there's lots of pieces missing here.
So this person meaning the sign administrator, or this person meaning somebody
The petitioner.
seeking a sign?
Someone seeking a sign.
Yeah.
And so, as I was going over this, and I'd heard the issue, the complaint, and I'm looking this over, and I'm thinking, I don't know where to go with this.
Well, there
I
has
have no
always,
idea what the complaint is.
and there's always been a sign ordinance that someone, whether it was antiquated or not, there's always been a process that somebody has to go through within the town.
I'm gathering
To
people hadn't
put up a
followed
sign.
that very much.
I mean, I was aware of it, I put up a sign, I came before
Yeah,
the
that
board,
I
and
think-
it was, I mean,
And
I
code
think most
and
people,
theirs, yeah.
I mean, we can't act or design something to appease somebody's lack of knowledge of ordinances, I mean,
I think the board has always been the sign ordinance person.
right.
And so what you're asking now is, do we want one person to be the first line of activity and then issues brought to us as the final arbitrator?
Yes, in a sense, that's the way it's been sort of fleshed out, but the section says, there is hereby created the office known as sign administrator, such officer shall be appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the select board. Well, we don't have any.
No, do we have anybody who is interested in that?
Well, Tom said he was, but because of his working situation, it doesn't make sense for him, because he's out of town. He's what, an hour and a half
It's
away.
another unpaid, potentially time-consuming
Yes.
administrator that'll be laying on the select board. What, I mean,
It's on.
I agree with him.
It's already on the select board by
Right.
history.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so now we
Someone
can't be
should-
the judge and
somebody
executioner at
should
the
come
same
in
time, so.
and see Sarah and ask what they gotta do to get a sign. And then, why doesn't the select board approve it? Or
Well,
just
let's say the
approve it?
select board denies it, and then this person says, well, I feel that that shouldn't be denied, where do they go? They need
Well,
to.
part of it is, if he comes in tomorrow morning, he's gotta wait 2 weeks for an answer,
Mhm.
because the select board meets every 2 weeks.
Well,
And then we
that's the way
sit
it
down.
goes.
Well, we're trying to be reasonable, but then we go through this and explain to this individual, here's all the rules about this, and this is what you have to follow, and you gotta give us $50 or whatever it was, and go through those processes. That shouldn't be tasked on the town clerk, except she can certainly hand him a copy of it.
No, I wasn't saying it shouldn't.
But she's gonna be the first one they contact, because they'll come in and say, hi, Sarah, I want to sign, and she's gonna say, call Paul.
Or say, here's the application.
If we have an application, which we
Right,
don't
which
have.
is easy enough to do,
Yeah.
and we can do that.
I could do that.
You can do an application. So we'll have Sarah make up an application, and then there is a,
Wouldn't you and Tom
Do
be
we in
on that?
fact have a person, or are we're just
I
looking
think,
at a
but then as a select
scenario?
board, if.
well, this calls for a person.
Okay,
We need to
but do
be
we
the-
have somebody asking making a complaint?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
this lay dormant for a while because things are pretty quiet.
Right,
Suddenly, they're not quiet anymore. And so Tom and I was hoping, I didn't realize he was gonna be here tonight, I was hoping he could make the presentation, but, because I'm getting it second or third hand, so we'll get somebody who's got the direct information. But the point is that a question has come up. It's a legitimate question. I've reviewed it. They make some good points. Whoever is making the complaint must have read this
Mhm.
to know where to complain. And it's like, uh-oh, where do we go from there?
So now this, in theory, this person should come before the board to say if this complaint is legitimate, and we say yes or no. and-
Exactly. I prefer that having just, I get there's something going on. I was hoping Tom would be able to be here to make that information. I don't know the information.
So
So,
we should wait
We
till
should wait
Tom's
till
here.
it's presented. I think there are two issues here, though. I mean, we should talk about having the sign administrator, and then, once our process is there, hand this person the application, and if they doesn't meet the criteria, then they come before the board to say, I was disapproved for my sign, and I believe there's some ambiguity in the process, and then we
sure.
vote on it.
And I think as long as we as a board are understanding that this isn't just dormant anymore, that it's actually
Right.
boiling to the top.
Yeah.
We pay attention to that, and then when Tom's back online, we can all get together and decide, because he's got the information. I don't have the information.
Yeah, I think that should be presented separately.
Yeah.
So this ordinance we voted on that, it is actually a working document.
Yes.
As it stands right now.
Yes.
And is there anybody out there that we think might be a good ordinance person?
You mean an administrator?
Yeah, administrator. How do we go about getting an administrator?
There we go. We can advertise, we can go knock on doors, you know, we can add a little flyer to our Christmas card list.
We put it on the constable.
We can put it on the constable, which I don't think is, well, I don't know.
It's just,
We can always ask.
sorry, Rob.
I think it will come down to a personal appeal.
Yeah.
Every one of us, I mean, we've put it out on the meetings and we've talked about it, but I think it's gonna come down to, hey, Joe, are you interested? We'd really like to have you involved.
Yeah, somebody who's interested.
And they say yes or no. I mean, there's
Well,
no-
and there are plenty of people in this town who are smart enough to do the job. And the question is, do they have the time and the energy? And we certainly support anybody who's interested in doing it, but it probably need to have one person be the point person.
Yeah,
To bring it back up, because we get into the business of as you said, the quasi-judiciary stuff,
yeah.
which is tricky. Okay, so this question I put on here because I wanted to discuss appointing, and so we've discussed it. I like the idea of putting this on the table until Tom comes back and making a decision. In the meantime, we are actively soliciting for people who like to do this.
How will we go about doing that?
Solicit?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that we can advertise it. We could put a note on the bulletin board.
Yeah.
We don't really have an instrument that,
How about on our website?
can we put on the website? We could put it on the website.
Okay.
Yeah. We could tell Karen across the street, she's got
Yeah.
an avenue.
And I'd be happy to work with Sarah, and just as being part of the process of putting that ordinance together to come up with an application that's simplified, that's,
That would be good, because you were in the meetings,
Yeah.
putting it together, so that would help.
Yeah.
That would, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it sounds like we've got a plan
I
to
like
find
that.
an administrator.
So anyway, so that was the thing that has boiled up. Let's, at least we're on the page.
Okay.
Okay, one other thing, and it dawns on me, it's not on the list, and it came in afterwards when I was putting the paperwork together. We have some minutes from Tuesday, March 19th, emergency select board meeting, and they basically say, who was there, Judy moved the matter should go to an executive session, Greg seconded it, we entered an executive session, Judy made a motion to exit, Judy moved to adjourn. That's pretty much the minutes, since we can't keep track of what's going on in it anyway. I would like to have a motion to accept these minutes as presented.
I move that we accept these minutes of the emergency meeting.
A second?
Second, do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, they are approved and accepted.
You gotta vote on it. I can't vote.
You can't vote?
I wasn't there.
Right.
Oh, all right, so
I can.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's three no's. You thought it was gonna be easy sitting there. Last item, public concerns. I have a note from Bonnie West. It's, she would like me to mention to everyone that there is a penny sale at Leland Gray. Doors open at 5:30, starts at 6:30, April the 6th. It's a 50-50 raffle, food sales, and all this is benefiting the Jamaica Village School. So those of you who have a lot of extra pennies lying around, the school can use the help.
That's always a fun night, by the way.
Yeah, it's all kind of fun. They have food and
Yeah.
stuff and
Right.
all kinds of strange things.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
I'd just like to say as the, something about the roads.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, good idea.
You know, if you live here full time, it's mud season. It's a revelation.
Yeah.
But this year, I think that they are gonna get worse before they get better, because we have such a deep frost, and it's starting to come
Mars
up
has
slow.
Yeah.
But I don't think, if I had to guess and talking to Keith, that the worst is yet to come.
been. Oh, really?
I think so.
I think actually on our road, it's been about 2 weeks going.
Right.
And in fact, riding home today, there are patches that are bad, but it is starting
I
to
know.
solid up.
Well, it's awful. It was an early
Yeah.
frost. and
It has been for us on Turkey Mountain the worst in 35 years.
Right. And we're not the only town.
Oh, the entire state. If you watch the local TV news, it's all over the state.
Yeah.
But just watching my driveway freeze up and thaw out
Yeah,
week after week lately,
yeah,
I
exactly.
can't imagine that some of the roads are really gonna be tough, so.
Yeah, it's really
The,
bad.
the road crew is doing the best they can.
Yeah.
If your road is impassable or you have some problem, call the town office or call the garage and they'll come up if they haven't already.
Some of it's gonna be, it's just gonna be muddy, but if it's impassable, then they can do what they can.
Yeah, actually, they even, the other day scraped it. They had
Good. Good
the
sign.
big, what's,
Grader.
the grader out. And it was like, wow, I've never seen this done before, where they literally scraped the road
Usually
with
they have
mud.
to wait till it dries out enough, so
Yeah.
that's kind of strange.
Yeah, he said to me this morning that he thought that they're hoping by the next week or so they can start scraping the roads. But it depends on the weather.
Sounds like a good weather forecast. for
Yes.
2 days.
It has been an adventure.
Yes. It's
To
a
put it
charm,
mildly.
part of the charm. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're standing adjourned at 8:27.